Radahn has always been a tough boss, no matter the version of him you're facing. His lore is so potent that Fromsoftware has the custom of releasing broken versions of this boss. If I had a nickel for every time that happened, I would have two, which isn't much, but it's weird it happened twice. Our memory's fresh when it comes to Promised Consort. I think I don't have to remind you of the unending torture that was fighting this boss before he was nerfed, and since he belongs to a DLC, there's no way of accessing that fight pre-nerf ever again unless mods. However, there is one Radahn we can go back to prior to any patches. To access the 1.0 version of Elden Ring, there's a few steps we must do. First of all, have the disc. Without it, as far as I know, there's no way of going back to it unless there's a mod out there. But if you're playing on console, that's the only way. Secondly, disable the internet connection from your device, in my case, the PS5. This way, the game will be installed without a single update. With most games, that's all there is to it, but Elden Ring kept giving me an error message where I couldn't create a new character because the version of the game was incompatible with the one I used last time I played. Still, there is one way to circumvent this small obstacle. As with all problems that can happen with the PS5, the best way to solve it was opening my wallet and pay €9 for a PS Plus subscription. Why? Because that gives me access to cloud saving, so I uploaded all my Elden Ring data to the cloud and deleted any trace of the game in the software. That way, the incompatibility wouldn't show up again since technically, it's the first time I'm playing the game. I can see you saying in the comments, this wouldn't happen on PC. Well, guess who's too poor to afford a PC that can run Elden Ring smoothly? And I didn't want to lose all my progress made with the other characters I have, so pain it is. Now that we can finally play the damn game... Intelligencer. I'm sorry, but I had to laugh on this one. Well, I guess it's time to go for a dexterity build, or a strength tur. Yes, let's go to Radahn, which is what you've come to watch. There is plenty to talk about here, so I'll separate the video into two different parts. First, the NPCs that you can summon, and then Radahn himself. First and foremost, he had Malenia's track. Now, starting with the NPCs, they were literal saboteurs. Look at this and tell me if you wouldn't want to go for the Frenzied Flame ending in this playthrough just to obliterate them all. The only reason I can think of why this happened is that there was a bug in the coding with the game's collision detection system, specifically in Radahn's fight, maybe because they are a different sort of summon. It basically caused the hits not to distinguish between enemies or allies. That's why you can see that besides Blide hitting me twice, Lionel also hit him in the process. I have no clue why they started throwing random punches right there when Radahn hadn't even landed yet. Maybe their AI detects his landing spot instantly and starts swinging as if Radahn's there. If there's a programmer somewhere, give us all your insight, brother. Not only were they a bunch of backstabbers, but also some of the wolves in that pack didn't want to risk their neck for us. I'm looking at you, Blide. Rush into battle trying to get all the glory. Should change his name to Blide Half Turtle instead. And this bloke trying to get a Call of Duty montage 30 kilometers away from the battle, no scoping with his crossbow. Alexander wasn't a part of the Warriors and neither was Patches, although to be honest, it's like he's never been. What a wimp. Okina, the katana guy, was the real damage dealer in this fight. He didn't last much because he spent all his points in dexterity, but damn, he made Radahn bleed while he was alive. By the way, I have to congratulate the dude who keeps creating mists of death blight even though Radahn can't be affected by that status effect. You're the real MVP, my man. One more very big difference is that you couldn't resummon them after they perished, which is a feature that, to me, made much more sense. What are the stakes in the battle if I can just keep resummoning NPCs every time they die? What is keeping me from running around on Torrent and letting my army of reanimated corpses do all the dirty work for me? It sounds pathetic to let such a big character, lore and gameplay-wise, as him die without lifting a finger. It's so anticlimactic. And some of the summons could bug out and never appear, like in this clip where Blide never showed up despite my character trying to summon him. Now, let's talk about the man himself. Between patches 1.02 and 1.03, he went from a godly strong boss with god-awful hitboxes to a pathetic weakling with corrected hitbox on March 17th of 2022. And to a strong boss again, but now maintaining the corrected hitboxes on April 4th of 2022. The coolest thing about the 1.00 version of him is that he has no nerfs, and no possible updates that took place in the 1.0 version of the game. This is a version of the general not many have seen, and I have to be honest with you, he isn't as strong as he was during the release of the game, which is curious, because I think that this version was already hard enough for Souls players, and even more so for newcomers to the genre, of which there were plenty when Elden Ring released. I can't imagine why they cranked up the difficulty for the game's release version other than making Radahn live up to his name, and showing new players that Fromsoftware doesn't fuck around. Regardless, he was very strong. With today's Radahn letting the NPC summons fight for you without revives, they will take him to his second phase, thanks to Blight mostly, the one that actually does some running. The boss we have today has pretty much the same health as the one in 1.0, but you will deal less damage to him. As a reference, the build I used between the two fights is exactly the same, except for the sword I was using. In 1.16 I used the Bastard Sword, but since it isn't present in 1.0, I had to use the Lord Sorn's Great Sword, and both did pretty much the same damage with only 23 hit points of difference, so I imagined the damage I did to him wouldn't be very different, right? Well, I'll be damned, 62 damage difference per jump in R2 is nothing to sneeze at when it should be only 23. Nowadays, he has 9500 HP. And to calculate how much he had before, I took a screenshot of the fight, took it to Canva, and made use of an advanced metric system to calculate his health. Put bar in damage and repeat bar, then multiply how many bars by damage. The result is 8914 approximately, which is lower, but at the same time he had more armor or damage negation. Notice how much is denied. My Bastard Sword should deal 353 raw damage. And it was reduced to 345, damage denied, 8. However, my Lord Sorn Great Swords deals 330 raw damage, but Radahn only received 283, a whooping 47 damage denied. If I want to get to 9.5k health only with jumping R2s, I would have to hit him 28 times with my Bastard Sword. But in 1.0, I would have to do it 31 times had I used the same Bastard Swords with the same damage. 3 more needed attacks that leave you exposed for a long while with a boss that can one-shot you with a variety of moves is a significant change. If you've been playing Souls games for a while, you would know that 3 hits can be the difference between beating a boss or die, leaving them a nail away from death. And we all know that the following attempts will be dog poo-poo just because you're mentally affected by that fail that could have been a victory. In reality, the biggest problem with Radahn was neither how much health he had nor the damage he did, because all things considered, his damage doesn't change much between 1.0 and 1.16. This overhead smash deals the same damage. You can use my mind bar as a reference. The sweep while riding Leonard did more or less the same damage also, among other things. The 2 most important things that differentiate him from his present self are his hitboxes and his aggressiveness. For starters, the gravitational arrows he shoots at the beginning of the duel were extremely hard to evade on horseback. They were homing missiles disguised as arrows, so you had to slowly approach him on foot, summoning Torrent while he reloaded them, and every time while on foot, if they hit you, it's game over. Nowadays, you only have to ride sideways and they will miss you entirely. They were also very inconsistent regarding their collision against the debris. Normally, if you're behind cover, they won't hit you. Well, in 1.0, I think some of those debris were made of plastic because goddamn they were inconsistent. Some stopped the missiles and others just didn't for whatever reason. Also, many times you would feel cheated because of the hitbox of some of his melee attacks. Let me show you a few examples of attacks that didn't feel like they connected, yet supposedly they did. This combo he does has 4 phases, and while it is completely avoidable in 1.16 if you stay below him, except for the last phase where you have to roll, His hitbox was so weird in 1.0 that even if you stayed glued to his balls, meaning far from his blades, he would still hit you, as you can see in this footage. What amazes me is the inconsistency of the hits, because by chance, the same strategy of looking up to his testicles sometimes worked. It was the perfect boss design for that friend that starts tweaking for every minute he's not at the slot machines, because that fight was a gamble 50% of the time. This is also the reason why NPCs last longer in 1.16, since the whole area surrounding his body isn't an active hitbox. So, they don't get hit as often as they do in 1.0. Secondly, his aggressiveness was way out of control. There were a few attacks that left the player an open window to punish him, because it always felt like the moment he finished doing a move, he started the next one, or went around for a ride on Leonard, evading your hits in the process. The player had to choose very carefully when to go for a hit, because there were just a few attacks that left him in recovering mode, or others that made it safe to hit him, like the moment where he slams his great swords on the floor to charge them with gravitational power. During this time, you could give him all the backshots you wanted. Here's a few situations where it felt like he was done, but my skull got crushed instead. Could be a skill issue, I don't know. I fought this boss more than 30 times for each version of the game to gather all of the footage, so I trust my instincts when I think that something is off. One of the nerfs he received later down the line is that his attacks were slowed down, and of course this version is patchless. So it wouldn't surprise me that here he is faster than in 1.16. That could be why it feels like he's all over the place and never stops. Here's a side-by-side comparison of the same attack starting at the same frame. Clearly the one in 1.0 finishes first, and there are more examples of that. All in all, Radahn was more powerful in 1.0, but not as much as he was in 1.02. I had a blast doing this video, but in classic Fromsoftware nature, it was a pain. I had to start the game, go to level 46 and fight Radahn thrice. First, I began a character in the 1.0 version, gathered the footage, then downloaded the save file from the cloud, which deleted the 1.0 save file from the console. I couldn't upload it to the cloud because it would delete my progress with multiple characters in 1.16. After finishing my stuff with the 1.16 character, I decided I needed to go back to 1.0 for a deeper analysis, so I had to go back to level 46 and fight every boss before Radahn. Maybe there was a smoother way to do it, but I didn't overthink it much. So if you value my effort and liked the video, please subscribe to the channel and hype the video. It helps me out a lot. See you in the next video, where I'll talk about a list of things that a lot of FromSoftware fans don't know about their games.